I welcome you all to Insarkari. So in this video, we'll be analyzing the important articles for the UPSC Civil Services examination for 25th of March 2023. So we see that Rahul Gandhi has been disqualified as the member of parliament, and obviously Congress calls it as Black Day for Democracy. And in this context, for us, it is important for us to know what are different legislations which talk about disqualification, what are different provisions. Apart from that, important Supreme Court judgments like the Lily Thomas case. And if the verdict is basically stayed by High Court or the Supreme Court, then no longer that disqualification is valid, or like we can say it is not applicable in that case. So these are some of the important things, and we need to look more about the history of earlier episodes of disqualification, whether a member of parliament has been disqualified earlier or not. So all of that thing is important for us. Moving forward, so talking about good governance, development, and employment. So talking about Uttar Pradesh, the government completes 6 years. So the major achievements they have been listed over here, which include zero tolerance against the crime and corruption. Then with prosperous farmers, there's been payment of more than rupees 2 lakh crore for sugarcane price, payment of more than rupees 1 lakh 4,000 crore to the farmers by purchasing 568 lakh metric tons of wheat and paddy under the PDS system. Then social security has been ensured. There's quality education facilities in terms of better infrastructure facilities that has been set up in primary and upper primary schools under the operation Kaya Kalp. There is uninterrupted power supply, pure water is there for all, one district, one medical college. There is government jobs, UP Global Investors Summit, Express Pradesh. And this is in terms of the road infrastructure. Maximum number of airports are there in Uttar Pradesh. Metro rail services have been started. MSME capital of India is there. Basically, highest number of MSMEs, that is 96 lakh units, are operational in Uttar Pradesh itself. So it is the MSME capital of India. There is okay, so it is a revenue surplus state also. So these are very crucial key points that have been listed there in terms of the defense manufacturing hub. And there is construction on the defense industrial corridor, and it is an emerging center of tourism. So in terms of tourism, there is development of Sri Kashi Vishwanath Dham corridors, there's construction of Sri Ram Temple in Ayodhya, there's grand celebration of Kumbh, Deepotsav, Rangotsav, and Dev Deepavali. So these are some of the important highlights and some of the important achievements of the government of Uttar Pradesh. So these are general points when we talk about what are, if like there's a question, or like even in an interview in personality test, there's a question asked to you that what is your idea of good governance. So here you can like take away some points from here. So we've talked about the health bill that is recently passed in Rajasthan. So Rajasthan, with this, with the passage of this bill, it has become the first state to do so. And for us, we need to have a general idea about what is the main point of agitation by the private sector doctors against this right to health bill, and like viewpoint about whether it should be like we should have it for pan India level or not is the next thing. And so for our general awareness, we need to have this thing in our mind. And apart from that, we need to know that whether health is a part of state list or union list or a concurrent list. So Jammu and Kashmir tightens the social media rules for the government employees. So we've been seeing that with the role of social media have been increasing. There's so many social media platforms like Instagram, YouTube, we have Telegram, we have Twitter, there are n number of platforms of Facebook, also WhatsApp. So with this, you're seeing that Jammu and Kashmir, it has basically introduced penalties which will be ranging from months salary cut to even dismissal of the government employees. So we are seeing even administrators, they've been very active, they've been making their accounts on social media platforms. So this thing is like very important development, which is important for the proper transparency and accountability of the government employees towards the people, towards the citizens of India. So the guidelines notified, they elaborated the guidelines and in this regard incorporated in the Jammu and Kashmir Employees Conduct Rules of 1971. And in the context of Jammu and Kashmir, basically social media is one of the potential platform which can be used to have links with the militants also. So from the perspective of security also, this is very important for the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. And also employees, they've been barred from the public utterances that could embarrass the Jammu and Kashmir government, government of India, or any state government. So you don't have basically the right to go out in front of media and utter things which can basically hamper the, or it can embarrass the government. And the rules also say that no government employee shall post, tweet, or share the content that is political or anti-secular, or it is communal in nature, or subscribe to pages in communities or Twitter handles and blogs of such nature. So definitely, and this is one of the important steps, because we are seeing that how the number of accounts and number of users on social media platforms has been increasing, and it takes seconds to think for the things to get viral on social media. So definitely it is the responsibility of the government employees to even you know ensure that whatever pages are to which they are subscribing or what type of content they are sharing on social media, so that definitely impacts the mind of civil society as well. So after Varanasi, now the government is going to organize the Tamil Sangamams in Saurashtra and also Uttarakhand. So we have talked about in detail about the Tamil Sangamam, which was held in Varanasi. So it was the Kashi Tamil Sangamam, basically coming together of two cultures and the traditions which are there in India, and definitely it is one of the examples of unity and diversity in India and the importance of different cultures, different, we can say, places that they enjoy in the Indian civil society. So we celebrate the civilizational links between the people of the southern part of the country and the sacred shrines of Uttarakhand in the north. So since it will be held in Uttarakhand also, so we'll be celebrating the links between two cultures. So that's why it is important that even the people of South India, they're aware about the cultures and the linkages which they used to share with the people of Northern India. So coming to the editorial page, we have read about the important role of Tipu Sultan. So this article is about him and it's very important personality. So Tipu Sultan was feared and envied not just during his reign of 1782 to 99 by his fiercest enemies, that is the Britishers, when he became the stuff of folklore in England. So, in the passage to England, news of his fearless opposition inflated his strengths and exaggerated his vices. So, he and his island aboard Seringamapatnam were assured a place in cartoons, skits, plays, children's games, and a design element on writing paper, secret cards. So, likewise, of on different things we have that. So in 19th century, Tipu mania even ensured him a place in the English nursery as a dreadful warning of what awaited the recalcitrant child. So well into the 1820s, we saw that the British theatre audiences, they were promised that a whole stud of horses will appear alongside an array of zamindars. So, talking about the history and the culture, so the fascination with this figure did not end with his defeat and death on the battlefield on 4th May 1799. So, he was killed by the British forces in the Battle of Seringamapatnam in 1799. And we have heard about a lot of instances and different events during his lifetime about his bravery and valor. So his death powered the legend, art, theater, and song, and this time not just in England but in his native land also. So we know about Tipu's bravery. It is immortalized by Amar Chitra Katha. So the Amar Chitra Katha, it talks about Tipu's bravery, and this became the emblem of anti-colonialism in the constitution also. So it is more controversial. Memories have been stalked by the troubling legacies of the conversion in regions populated by his enemies. So he has been talking about, this part is talking about how his death has been portrayed in art. So that is not so important for us. And obviously Britishers, they commemorated his death as the worthy and heroic enemy of the Britishers as they defeated, and finally they ended up killing him in the Battle of Seringamapatnam. And his afterlife, Tipu Sultan's afterlife in India has been more mixed. So the British, they chose the Mysore city, the erstwhile capital of a remembered dynasty, to prevent the contamination from any memories of Tipu Sultan's defiance. So Seringapatam was later revived as a pilgrimage site for the British soldiers and tourists wishing to reenact the British conquest. And in the 19th century, Mysore, Tipu was admired in the Lebanese, and not just for his firm stand against the British, but for prohibiting arak, toddy, ganja, and opium, as well as gambling or illicit relations. And we also know about their advancements in military and how basically they even used technology, advanced weapons in the battle. And he was also known as the Tiger of Mysore. So, which even this Amar Chitrakatha also talks about. So, talking about the historical evidence, so from all the historical sources and the image analysis, we know that Tipu's death during the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War was unknown to the victors. Was he in hiding, or had he escaped altogether from the theatre war? So when his body was found hours later, along with the heaps of other bodies at the gateway, he was found to have fought like a soldier until his last. And General Baird's heroism was confined to discovering the body before it was officially identified by the grieving family. Whoever had shot him neither recognized nor engaged him in conversation. So, for him, what is important for us is that Tipu Sultan was killed in the Fourth Anglo-Mysore War, which is also known as the Battle of Seringapatnam, which was held in 1799 in Mysore. So he was also known as the Tiger of Mysore, and the Amar Chitra Katha also talks about his bravery and his valor and the way he fought the battle unto his last. So, in the currently overheated state of Karnataka, the province of the historian has severely shrunk, yielding place to politicians and religious heads who now adjudicate the historical truth. So, the promise of historical evidence of the existence of such heroes already substantiated in print, image, and high decibel campaigns that further diminishes the historical scholarship. So, who knows that even archaeological or the DNA proof will not be produced? But meanwhile, Tipu Sultan must die yet again at the hands of ever newer claimants to power. So earlier, Mysore was the present-day Karnataka region. So it's saying that with the rise of political elements, the Tipu Sultan he must die again because we are seeing new claimants to power. So this article is talking about the disqualification of Sir Rahul Gandhi. So it is not so important and thing importance not here for us in this article as of now. So a chilling remark and the price to pay. So when India's Union Law Minister describes the retired judges in a rather harsh manner, it is something that cannot be taken lightly. And for the minister to label the retired judges who question the state policies as being anti-India elements is not just a case of a flawed understanding of the concepts, but also a matter of grave concern for the citizens. So, as we know that there is a tussle which is going on between the union government and the judiciary over the collegium system. So, we've always seen that our union law minister has to say something or the other regarding that thing. So the minister's parting shot, it was based on the erroneous assumption that certain judges they are working against India and they will have to pay the price. It was not only intimidatory in its tone and tenor, but also portends grave danger for the future. So this is saying that the author of this article is saying that when a union law minister has to say something like this against the retired judges that they are anti-India whenever they take a stand against the policies made by the center. So it is that point of time they are being labeled or called as anti-Indians. But this thing can definitely have repercussions in terms of the peace and order and law and order also. So that's one thing. So even the union law minister statements, they are also defamatory and they raise larger issues that touch the core of our polity. So definitely, if even if the judges they have retired, so definitely they do have the right to free speech, which is their fundamental right under Article 19 of the Constitution, which is there in the Part 3. So judges who demit the judicial office, they do not cease to be citizens of this country. Definitely, it does not mean that if you have been retired as a judge, you are no longer the Indian citizen. So that's very absurd. So they have not battered away their fundamental rights for the pension they draw, and they have a right to free speech and expression and a duty to speak up when they find that the legislature, the executive, or even the judiciary to be transgressing their limits. So definitely they have the right to speak up. There is their fundamental right, and it is not just against the executive, but also it can be against the legislature or even the judiciary also. So here it is saying that yes, they have the fundamental right, and it does not mean that if they have retired, so they can't speak up against the policies which they find are not basically they're not going to, or which they find that there is some flaw in those policies, or they can be improved in some another way. So the act of questioning the state is not a case of being anti-national. It is a case of being a concerned patriot. And in turn, the response of the state has to be to either justify the measures it has adopted or take the advice offered and course correct. So obviously, there are only two options which are present in front of the executive. The government is that either you take up those amendments or those suggestions, and then you like basically make the suitable changes and amendments, or like you can just like justify whatever you are coming up with. So these are the only two options for the government, but you cannot say that a person speaking against your policies is anti-national. So citizens of India, and this includes the retired judges, they have a right to free speech and expression and a duty to speak up when there are constitutional transgressions. So as we know that in India, we have the constitutional supremacy, and that's there. So So the deleterious effect of all this will be felt only by the nation, only in actions of the state will be unchecked, not because these acts are constitutional and valid, but for the reason that the mere act of questioning them will endanger the individual. So he or she is held in terrorem, for they have been told that they will have to pay the price if their conduct does not meet with the executive's approval. So obviously it would be even hampering the democracy, as we talk about the strength of the democracy. When it comes to things like this, they are being said by the Union Law Minister. And in the address to the Supreme Court of India on November 2022, the President of India, Draupadi Murmu, said that she raised the issue of the plight of the under trials in the prisons of India despite getting bail. So the president narrated her experience of meeting in under trial prisoners when she was a member of the Legislative Assembly in Odisha and later as the governor of Jharkhand. So it was a speech that moved the court, which directed the jail authorities to submit the details of such prisoners to the state governments concerned, which in turn were to forward the documents to the National Legal Services Authority within 15 days itself. So, had the president kept quiet for fear that she may have to pay the price, things would never have moved. So, it is just one instance that has been taken up as an justification or to help us make understand the things much easier, that if she wouldn't have raised this issue, highlighted it in her speech, then things would not have been as they took place as they happened in just 15 days, which should have happened even without highlighting that thing by our president. But still, if she wouldn't have taken up that, then obviously things would not have been as they are today, as far as the plight of under trials is concerned. So, looking ahead, it is reasonable to expect that the Prime Minister, who was a powerful orator and a vocal critic of many of the policies of the previous government, would certainly not want his government to be associated with such a chilling statement made by his Law Minister. And it will also be reasonable to hope and expect that the two high constitutional dignitaries, they will now discuss this issue and ensure that any further damage to India's constitutional ethos is mitigated. It is only then that the message will be clear that in India, silence will never be coerced by law or by the law minister. So, since we know constitutional supremacy is there, fundamental rights they can't be violated. And in the context of the fundamental rights, also, we need to know all the important judgments with their proper chronology, what was said by the Supreme Court, and whether they can be amended. So, all the important judgments, most important of all of them is the Kesavananda Bharati judgment of 1973, where we also had the basic structure doctrine. So India failed to create positive impression among businesses which are moving out from China. So despite resources being available in India and that to at a very cheaper price, India has not been able to create a positive impression among the businesses moving away from China, which is as per a parliamentary panel on the commerce. And read the report, it stated that India has not been able to take the advantage of the China plus one strategy, through which the multinationals they shifted their manufacturing and production away from China. So this was definitely an opportunity for India, which could have been leveraged. But as per this report, we have not been successful in doing so. And it said that the other Southeast Asian countries in like Vietnam, Thailand, Cambodia, and Malaysia, they have become bigger beneficiaries of the China plus one strategy. So you need to know that China plus one strategy has been talked about in which context, it is related to what. So that's there. So it's clear that the Southeast Asian countries, they have been much more successful in attracting such businesses which are exiting from China. So Supreme Court says that membership of a banned outfit is crime under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. So if you try to become a member of an already banned outfit, so you'll be basically tried under UAPA. So the top court it has set aside its own judgment that had concluded that mere membership, unlike the active membership of an unlawful group, did not make a person criminal or a terrorist. So that's there. And so a person who is or continues to be even a mere member of a banned organization is liable to be found criminally liable under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act for acting against the sovereignty and integrity of India. And with this judgment, the Supreme Court has set aside a series of its own judgments which had concluded that mere membership, unlike the active membership of an unlawful association or organization, did not make a person criminal or a terrorist. So just a mere membership will not make you a criminal, but holding a mere membership of such banned organization is basically the person is liable to be found criminal under the UAPA Act. And Justice Shah, he reasoned that an organization is declared unlawful and banned only after the center is satisfied that it is indulging in unlawful activities against the sovereignty and integrity of India. So it is there in the hands of the central government to decide and to ban such organizations. And the court also noted that that a person who chooses to continue to remain like to be a member of such an organization which has been banned for the activities which would impact the sovereignty and integrity of India. So basically said that that person would also be tried as a criminal. And those persons who have left a banned organization, they could not be held liable under UAPA. So if you like leave your membership of such an organization once it is declared banned, so you will not be tried under UAPA. Basically, you will not be held liable as a criminal under this act. And when we talk about the fundamental right, which is mentioned under Article 19, Clause 4, which says that the citizens, so the first important keyword that is that it is only about citizens' right and not the right of every person who is living in India. So that it said that the citizens' right to form the unions or associations, they are subject to the power of the state to make laws to impose the reasonable restrictions in the interest of the sovereignty and integrity of India or public order or morality. So these four conditions, they are the reasonable restrictions which are imposed under Article 19, Clause 4. That includes the sovereignty, integrity of India, public order, and morality. So you can't make any organization or an association which hampers these four factors. So Indian Council of Medical Research, it releases ethical guidelines for artificial intelligence usage in the healthcare sector. So we've been seeing that the role of artificial intelligence has been increasing, and obviously it is applicable in diverse areas, and one of them is healthcare. So it is important how we are going to use it to our advantage as far as healthcare is concerned, be it like the designer babies that we talk about. So the ethical element is very important. So here we have the ethical guidelines for the same, and it aims at creating an ethics framework for development, deployment, and adoption of solutions in artificial intelligence space. So you can, like just have a look at what are these guidelines. So Saudi Arabia and Syria, they may restore the ties as West Asia reshuffles that continues. So in this context, we've already discussed in a lot of detail about the restoration of the diplomatic relations between Saudi Arabia and Iran. And now there is news that it might be possible that Saudi Arabia and Syria, even they might restore their relations and ties. So that's basically we are seeing how the geopolitical relations and things they've been changing. The geopolitical order has been reshaping as far as West Asia is concerned. So the main thing is that it has become a region of deprioritization by the USA, and that's how even China is taking advantage of this opportunity by increasing its role into the Western Asian countries. So we are seeing that protests they are going on in France. So more than 450 people they were arrested, and they've been going on violent protests since the start of the year against the French president's bid to raise the retirement age to 64. So that's the main reason behind the violent protests that have been going on in France. So 14 people have died in US strikes on Syria and revenge with the drone attack. So this region, it is always in news because of different attacks by different countries because of the volatility and from the perspective of the security. So it is important for us to have clear idea about the geography of this region. So you need to open up your like atlases and you can just go through about the important water bodies which are located different seas and which all countries they share the borders, they have coast, and apart from that, if there is any straits, any river, any lake, which is important and which has been in news, so that becomes important for our examination. So as per North Korea, they've tested underwater drone which is able to trigger a radioactive tsunami. So North Korea claimed that it has tested an underwater nuclear attack drone able to unleash a radioactive tsunami as it blamed recent US and South Korea exercises for a deteriorating regional security situation. So we've been seeing this thing also that another hotspot as far as when we like talk about in the context of security is the Taiwan region because of the issues between China and Taiwan and obviously between North Korea and South Korea also whenever there is any exercise joint exercise conducted by USA with any Indo-Pacific country then even China and North Korea they kind of carry out different exercises specifically North Korea does so very often so right now when we were reading about this article so this is regarding the same thing so in this picture also picture or during the blast is there in front of you. So coming to the business page, so government raises a securities transaction tax on the derivatives. So if you're into trading through derivatives like options and futures in the stock market, so it's a sad news that securities transaction tax it has been increased by the government. So basically the rate has been increased by 25% from 1st of April 2023, which is going to push some traders to offshore markets and dent the trading volumes on the stock exchange because obviously there have been an increase in the tax rates. So the traders they might be shifting to some other countries, the capital markets of some other countries, and which is obviously not going to be good for our capital market. And right now the tax rate was 0.625 percentage. So it is basically the new tax rate would be this. Earlier it was 0.5%. Now it is going to be 0.625%. So this is for options and futures. They will attract a levy of around 0.125 percentage. So in a way, it would also be discouraging excessive trading in futures and options because uh, most often, people get attracted towards trading using the futures and options because of their expectations of earning huge amounts of profits in one time. So basically, in order to prevent that exercise, the securities transaction tax has been increased and it would obviously be leading up to increasing the revenue share of the government, the tax share of the government, and that would be helping in reducing the fiscal deficit also. The G20 sees that inflation is sticky and it's going to extend the policy tightening further. So that is a concern, and we've been talking about in context of this thing, in context of inflation being sticky, is not that too elastic. We've been following the tight monetary policy, how that is impacting even the growth rate. So obviously it can't go on for a very long time because growth is also very important. So That is basically the dilemma which the policymakers they have to decide about. So participants they do not envisage the current banking turmoil leading to a systemic crisis in India, and they prefer to tackle the financial stability risks separately. They do not view them as a constraint to the rate increases. So the chief economic advisor he says that it's a collective concern when talk about inflation, and inflation is sticky as a major concern, and they are focused on restoration of the price stability. So majority they see that inflation easing is more slowly than they would like, and they are set on sticking with the monetary tightening. And recently we just saw that yesterday only we saw that US Fed it has increased its policy rate. So the exercise goes on, and US Fed's latest comments it signals more open-mindedness on the rate path. But let's see how far it is going to be this way. RBI asked to monitor card spending under the LRS for tax purposes, though seeking to tighten the implementation of the increased 20% tax collection at source norms for the foreign remittances, which was introduced in the union budget. Finance Minister, she has been asked to monitor the use of credit cards for the foreign travel purposes. So the payments which are being made using the credit cards during the foreign trips, they are like right now they are not being captured under the liberalized remittance scheme, and such payments escape the tax collections at source. So for this purpose, they will now be monitored under the LRS. So Lok Sabha has approved the setting up of the GST Appellate Tribunal, and yesterday's newspaper we saw the important details about it. So it would be helping in reducing the burden upon the judiciary, as all the disputes related to GST would now be transferred to this tribunal. And we talked about that it would be headed or chaired by a retired Supreme Court judge. And apart from that, you can also talk about or find out more about its composition and its powers. Coming to Financial Express, the sting in the tails, the debt mutual funds, they lose the long-term tax advantage. Secondly, we saw right now, we just saw that security transaction tax on futures and options that has been hiked by 25%, and tax on the royalty fee has been doubled. And the finance secretary-led panel is going to address threats related to pension reforms. And because of all these changes in the tax rates in different ways, we saw the impact even on the Sensex, which slided down. So these are the new proposals. So finance secretary says that income earning instruments, they should be treated as income earning instruments. That is the direction in which it is going. So we saw that there have been some changes in the capital gains of the investors in debt funds, and security transaction tax has already been discussed, and return on capital from the invites and REITs to be taxed at the slab rate, but that is only after adjusting for the cost of the acquisition. Fourthly, withholding tax, royalty, and fees for the technical services earned by the foreign companies that doubled to 20%, and 10-year tax holiday for the offshore banking units that would be set up in the gift city located in Gujarat, and withholding tax rates for dividends received by the non-residents have been halved to 10%. Lastly, panel which would be set up to look into the issue of the pensions and evolve an approach which addresses the needs of the employees while maintaining the fiscal prudence. So here also, like when we talk about the passage of the finance bill, so in this context, we need to know each and every step, what is the proper and the entire procedure of passage of the budget. So that is also important for us to know the proper chronology and different constitutional articles about the finance bill, what is the difference between finance bill and the money bill. So all of that becomes important. So we need to know clearly what do we mean by the angel tax. So basically it is imposed on the startup companies who raise their funds beyond the fair value of a particular share. So the amount that is raised on that basis, basically angel tax is applicable on that amount of money or the fund that is raised by startups. So the recently passed finance bill, it requires NRI and the foreign investors in the private firms to pay tax on the shares issued on the premium pricing. And this is expected to increase the tax burden on the foreign angel and the seed investors. And government will share the draft rules, which is related to the valuation, which with the stakeholders for their inputs next month. So all the details they would be shared, but now, this would be negatively impacting the NRI investors because they would now have to pay an angel tax. So we seeing that bank FDs they are becoming much more attractive because we know that on the share market or the capital market, it is not that to say when we compare with other investment options like FDs where we get assured returns and the money is also safe. So that's one thing. So this is we're talking here about the chart. The table is talking about the different FD rates which are offered by different banks. So most often, like for us, we just need to know the we need to have idea about the range of the interest rate which is there on FD for 3 to 5 years and beyond 5 years. So for 3 to 5 years, it is around 6.25% to 7.6%. And for more than 5 years, if you hold your funds for more than 5 years in the form of FD, so the range is around 5.85 percentage to we have it maximum is 7.25 percentage. So like even if you go for 3 to 5 years, the interest rate is not that bad. So the tax is even like nil, it is zero for income, which is even little over rupees 7 lakhs. So tighter tedious provisions are there on the online gaming. So in a move that could incentivize more taxpayers to move to the conventional income tax regime, the finance ministry has introduced a marginal relief for those earning just a little more than rupees 7 lakh in 1 year. So this would ensure that the tax burden wouldn't include paying any tax like others below rupees 7 lakh income threshold. So this is again one of the incentives that is being provided to the taxpayers is the shift to this new tax regime. In yesterday's newspaper, we've already talked about a TB-free India by 2025. So we'll not be taking up that again. So green bonds, as the name is self-explanatory, that the bonds which are used to raise money and which are titled basically green bonds, all of that money goes only for the projects which are meant for sustainability, for protecting the environment, which are focusing upon green energy or electric vehicles. So these are basically what our green bonds are. So there's a term which is greenwashing. So it is again in the context of the green bonds only. So SEBI's revised norms for the green debt securities will make greenwashing a lot more difficult to pull off. And there are though a few other areas that the guidelines it fails to address, including the need for an official green taxonomy. So there's going to be mandatory pre and post issue third party review, which goes beyond ICMA recommendations for the green bonds. So you can see the banking turmoil and different banks. Basically, here we're talking about the Deutsche Bank. Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrongly. So the bank, it is the UBS. It hit as the bank horror leads to stress signals. So far from Credit Suisse's fall, and you can see how the share prices they are plunging. So the German bank's credit default swaps rise the most in 4 years. So European banking stocks they fell sharply on Friday, with Deutsche Bank and UBS knocked by worries that actions by the regulators and the central banks may not have not yet contained the worst problems to face the sector since 2008 global financial crisis. So because of this, we're seeing a sharp fall in their prices. So when we talk about having a relook at the pension, so any decision by the government, it will have to balance two key factors. So it has to take into account the political considerations with the general elections, which is coming in a year, and at the same time, it has to be mindful of the fiscal burden that is linked to the old pension scheme. So these are two important things which needs to be kept in mind when the government would be discussing this thing. Moving forward, so directly let's move on to the editorials. So the editorial, let's see what important things do we have today. So justice will not be served until those who are unaffected are as outraged as those who are. So that is one idea, one philosophy behind justice. So again, this is here also, it is a repetition, it is about the disqualification, and it is political. IPCC's report, we have talked about the Paris Pact target and the funding problem. And we have also talked about mitigation and adaptation. So that has also been taken up. So we've also discussed in detail about the emerging global disorder, or we can also say it to be new emerging geopolitical order that is shaping things at the international level. So this also we have already taken up that Supreme Court it has reversed its past orders, which says that even if you're a member of a mere membership would also attract an offense under UAPN, you would be treated that particular member would be treated as a criminal if you're even a like mere member of an banned outfit. So we complete 50 years of Project Tiger. So this because of this it becomes important, and India considers translocating a few big cats to Cambodia. So that is one update. And the species they have become extinct in the last decade in Cambodia. So in this context, like we have also imported or translocated cheetahs from Namibia and South Africa to the Kuno National Park in Madhya Pradesh. So we are having, or we are in right now, we are in discussions with the government of Cambodia for the translocating or for translocation of tigers from India. So the last tiger that was spotted on camera trap in Cambodia was in 2007. So India basically following the success of first of its kind transcontinental translocation of the African cheetahs, we have signed a memorandum of understanding with Cambodia to assist it with all the technical details and knowledge regarding the reintroduction of tiger in the country. So this project Tiger it began in 1973 at the Corbett National Park. Now it completes 50 years on 1st of April 2023. So tigers they've gone locally extinct even in Vietnam and Laos as well, but officials in the Union Environment Ministry said the countries have shown no interest in similar translocations. So this is going to be the very first exercise by India when we talk about translocation. So this has never been done in India before, although we have been translocating tigers within the country as and when it has been required. So this has been within the country only, within India only, and not to another country. For instance, we'll be translocating tigers from Corbett, which is there in Uttarakhand, which is the largest tiger population in India, to Rajaji National Park, which is there in Uttarakhand only. And translocation would be done on the basis of IUCN protocol. So there is a proper protocol, there's a proper process of translocating these species. So there are total 53 tiger reserves in entire India, which covers 2.4% of the country's geographical area. So right now there are around 3,000 tigers found in India, which is around 70% of the global wild tiger population, and this is increasing at an annual rate of 6%. And India has the largest number of cat accredited tiger reserves in the world at 17. So India has the largest number of them. Talking about the Abel Prize, so the most coveted prize in mathematics is called the Mathematics Nobel for 2023. It has been announced. And it goes to an Argentinian American mathematician. So he was awarded this for his work on partial differential equations, which by relating one or more unknown functions and their derivatives allow the scientist to predict the behavior of the physical world. And the first Abel Prize was awarded in 2003, which basically this award it recognizes pioneering scientific achievements in mathematics, and it is named after Norwegian mathematician Niels Henrik Abel, and is often considered to be an equivalent of the Nobel Prize, which does not have a category for mathematics. So, an important information, interesting fact that no Nobel Prize is awarded for the category of mathematics. Like, there is no such category of mathematics as far as the Nobel Prize is concerned. So, that's why the Abel Prize is, in a way, considered or thought of as a Nobel Prize in mathematics. So when we talk about disqualification, so we have Article 102 of the Constitution, which deals with the grounds for disqualification of a parliamentarian. So grounds have been mentioned over here. So it says that an MP will lose his membership of the House if he is so disqualified by or under any law which is made by the Parliament. And the law in this case is the RPA Act. And then we also have Supreme Court judgments. So one of the most important ones is the Lily Thomas case. And then we have the ruling in the Lok Prahari versus Union of India 2018. Here the Supreme Court clarified that a disqualification triggered by a conviction will be reversed if the conviction is stayed by a court. So this is also one thing which can be kept in mind, that if the conviction is stayed by a higher court, then your disqualification would also be stayed and it would no longer be applicable. So even now, Pakistan received $2 billion rollover deposit from China for the IMF bailout. And Pakistan is scrambling to increase its forex reserves, which they are estimated to be at USD 4.8 billion after China it refinanced around USD 500 million last week. And before also, a Chinese bank provided USD $700 million to Pakistan. So again, we are seeing that countries, specifically Indian neighbors, they are depending more upon China funding. And the situation in Sri Lanka is also because of the huge amount of funding that was provided by China to Sri Lanka. So since the country, they end up taking so much that they are unable to pay back all of that on periodic basis. So that's when there is a situation of economic crisis in countries. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining in Sarkari, and you'll be also provided with the PDF link in the description box. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please hit the subscription button, and also hit the like button if you really find the analysis video helpful, and do share these videos. Thank you so much.